It's time to get inside the Giants Huddle.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
On Giants.com.
I like it, I like it.
And the Giants mobile app.
Boom, give me some juice.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's roll.
Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, presented by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. John Schmeelk with you with our normal Friday episode. We got a player interview. Lance Medow with a Jets preview. This week it'll be ESPN's Rich Cimini. And then we have Bob Papa with the head coach of the Giants, Brian Daboll. But we're going to lead things off. I had a chance to sit down with Giants wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson. And now we're joined by Giants wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson right off the practice field. And Wan'Dale, this is your first week without a maintenance day. You're going all 3 days at practice. That's got to be exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Just starting to see little progress in my ACL and my leg, getting stronger each week. So this is kind of a step in the right direction. So,
is that something that you feel and you communicate that to the trainers? Is it something that they do with strength tests? Like, how do you determine that you don't need the maintenance day anymore?
Really after games, just kind of seeing where I'm at. And this week I was in a much better place than I was in the previous games, just the way my knee had felt with the way my quad had looked. So just staying on top of that, staying on top of the rehab. And the trainers are doing a really good job with the maintenance and things like that too. So.
Were you still trying to manage swelling and stuff like that after games?
Swelling, not so much. It really most so just soreness. I say I haven't really swelled up since I was around like 7 months or so.
Nice.
So we've been going pretty strong without swelling up, and now it's just more so just making sure that it feels good and that it's strong.
So how has practice been this week, coming off your guys' big win against Washington?
It's been good. Really detailed, and making sure that we're just trying to continue on this win streak and do what we have to do against the Jets. So
you guys had your first half offensive touchdown, 2 for 1. You got 2 this week. What is it that you guys see kind of coming together with your offense where you're starting to sustain some more of these longer drives up and down the field?
Really, it's just all the execution. There's a lot of drives that we had in previous games. We're driving down the field, and then it's just one little mistake that would kill our drive. So now it's making sure that we're executing on each and every play, making sure that we're getting positive yardage and no negative plays. And I think that's really the main thing. As long as we aren't going backwards, then we'll be fine.
For the wide receiver group, they seem to be focusing in on a playtime split that's been fairly consistent the last couple of weeks. Darius is up around 85%. Then you and Jalen are kind of around 60 to 70%, right? And then Isaiah gets in there for some snaps as well. Has that allowed you guys to kind of get into the roles you're comfortable in and understanding exactly what they're looking for from each of you guys within this offense each week?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're doing a pretty good job of letting us know what we're going to be doing in the game and what they want out of us. So just going each and every week and just listening to the coaches and watching the film and figuring out what we got to do.
Now, you only had the one catch last week, but I thought it was a special one, and I'll explain why. You've had a bunch of games with a bunch of catches, but at least from my perspective, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is like your first really short, make 3 or 4 guys miss, big run after catch. Was that something a little bit special to you that you finally got the chance? Look, I can make dudes miss again. I feel good. This is awesome.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Even from the start of last year, I got hurt early and coming back still wasn't all the way comfortable. And then in the game that I had my ACL, I was the most comfortable that I had been in. So just getting back to that point and feeling good and just having the ball in my hands and knowing that I can still do those kind of things was really nice.
What is it like trying to build that chemistry with Tyrod? I'm sure you haven't taken a ton of snaps with him up to when he had to step in as starting quarterback.
It's been nice. Luckily for me, I had all those reps last year with Tyrod when I was a rookie and during the OTAs and running a lot with the twos and things like that. So me and Tyrod are on a pretty good basis, and we're with the same agency and things like that too. So we've been pretty close ever since I signed with them, and that's like a big brother to me. So.
You've been taking a lot of your reps in the slot this year. What are some of the things for you that are most fun and also most challenging about playing inside?
You got to read a lot. That's probably the most challenging part, especially in our offense. You have to make a lot of decisions, whether to break in, out, sit. And Dave's he's especially hard on me, especially when it comes to those things. So just making sure that I'm staying on top of that, watching my film and doing things like that. But then again, I love how much flexibility he does give me and allows me to do different things within my routes. So.
Yeah, I was going to follow up. You say it's the most challenging thing, but isn't that also the most fun thing? Because it's kind of like, all right, well, we're designing this play. You're going to be one-on-one with this dude, and you're just like, go beat him, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's more so with the coverages where it's not man and it's some zones and things like that. So you got to figure out where you need to turn and where you need to sit and things like that. So just being on the same page with both the quarterbacks and now being with Tyrod and having to figure out what he's seeing out there. So it's been nice. So.
What's been the process like trying to get that feel? People talk about Travis Kelce, for example. No one's better at finding gaps in the zone than he is, right? Is it film study, understanding during the week what they're going to do? Is it feel over the course of the game? You figure out what they're trying to do to you specifically. How do you figure out exactly how to find those open spaces in those zones you're talking about?
I definitely think it's a little bit of both. I think throughout the week you have to figure out exactly what that team likes to do, if they're a hands-on zone team or if they just like to spot drop and look at the quarterback. So just figuring out each week what defenses are doing, and then whenever we get into the game, just start talking to the quarterbacks and looking at the iPad and seeing what they're doing on their side of the ball. So it takes a lot, but it's definitely worth it.
We've seen you and Jalen kind of start becoming a bigger part of the offense, as I mentioned previously. I feel like your guys' skill sets really complement each other, right? You know, he kind of plays that Deshaun Jackson role, get over the top. You know, he might not have 10 targets, but he's going to have 5 of them, but 4 of them will be 30 yards down the field, right? You might be the guy that has 9 or 10 targets, but they're not going to be maybe quite as deep. Do you guys feel like your skill sets, and then throwing Darius, who's kind of like your rock there, really complement each other?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, me and Jalen have talked about that really from the moment that since he got drafted, and just letting him know, I'm like, bro, you don't realize how much you're going to help me. And vice versa too. I mean, once they start biting on everything underneath, you're going to be able to open up so much things over the top. And I just keep telling them, just keep going, and the ball's going to keep finding you. So,
have you seen safeties being a little bit more over the top on that side since he's been getting more snaps?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can tell whenever he's in there, the corners and the safeties are a little scared of his speed. So I keep telling them, hey, just keep putting it on tape, and they're going to have to keep backing up.
Let's talk about the Jets defense. You talk about seeing what defense is going to try to do to you. You've played a couple of defenses here that I think play the same type of base coverage, right? San Francisco similar, Seattle is similar. So what can you take out of those games and those opponents that maybe you can apply this week to the Jets?
You really know it's going to be like a 4-man rush for the most part for really the whole game, and you got to be ready to beat some man coverage, and you got to be ready to find the holes into the zone coverage. So just doing a little bit of everything and making sure that we're getting the ball and getting up vertical.
When you play those 3 deep coverages, I know it's zone, but in some ways, is it almost like man, especially for the outside guys?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, those outside guys, especially if they're pressed on them, it's essentially like man, and they're going to be following them anywhere. So a lot of teams do a lot of different things, but, yeah, I mean, it definitely plays out like man a lot.
And obviously the way that the Jets rush the passer, this is what all those 3D teams with Seattle used to do too, right? You know, you keep things in front, and eventually they're going to count on their 4 guys to get there when they flood their zones, right? So do you see how their secondary works together with their front to kind of balance each other and complement each other in the way they play their defense?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, those DBs know that there's a time clock in their head, so they know that they're going to get back there eventually, so we got to do a really good job of getting our depth and doing what we have to do at the receiver position and making sure that we're getting open.
I talk about the rush. Let me ask from your perspective on offense. Have you been able to feel, just from seeing when the ball's coming out, that the protection from the offensive line has gotten a little bit better these last couple of weeks where you guys have had time to maybe run some of those deeper routes?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, we got all the confidence in the offensive line, and I just think it's more so them getting healthy and them spending a lot more time together and just being out there on the field together, getting those reps. So I think they're going to continue to do a good job and allow us to get down the field and make plays.
How does the preparation change when you're playing a team like the Jets where they don't move their corners, right? Sauce is always on one side, DJ Reed's always on the other. I'm assuming both those guys are going to play this week. Does that give you guys more flexibility to kind of select your matchups and where you want certain guys to be because you know they're not going to generally follow you guys around?
Yeah, I guess so. I say that's more so for the coaches
right?
up there.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're going to be ready for whoever we have to match up against. Obviously, me in the slot, I have Michael Carter. But, I mean, everybody's going to be ready, and everybody has to be ready for their matchup.
And Michael Carter's one guy that not a lot of people talk about. When you watch him on tape, what do you see?
He's a physical guy. He's quick. I mean, he's not the biggest guy either. So, I mean, it's going to be definitely a good matchup with us, too, and to see him coming across from me. So,
have you gotten any feel for the Giant-Jet fan rivalry? Because I know it's not much of a team rivalry, AFC, NFC. Have you gotten a feel for what it means to the fans yet?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I say, I mean, you can go around and you can just kind of see who's the Jets and who's the Giants fans. So definitely want to make sure that we make sure our Giants fans are happy after Sunday. I
saved the toughest question for last. Are you dressing up for Halloween at all this year?
I say the only way that'll happen is if somehow my little sister gets up here and I got to dress up with her. But other than that, I don't plan on dressing up.
Dude, I'm with you. I have a 6-year-old daughter and my wife. They try to get me to dress up every year. Mm-hmm. Nope.
Yeah, my 3-year-old little sister, she probably want me to be something that has to do with a princess. So that's her little thing right now. So
you could be like the horse and she can like maybe ride you around or something?
That would probably be exactly what she wanted to do. So, yep.
Sorry, can't do it. Knee. Sorry, can't do it.
Oh, yeah, no, I put it on my shoulders or something and tell her I got you for about 10 minutes, and then after that, you go get your candy. So,
Wan'Dale, have some fun this weekend, man. We appreciate it.
thank you.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New you moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
That's Giants wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson. Giant fans, I just watched this great new series with Eli Manning, Champion the Journey, presented by Citizens. Eli talks with Tracy Wolfson about life after the Giants and everything he's working on now, like broadcasting and his business endeavors. You can check out the series at citizensbank.com/champion the journey. We thank Wan'Dale Robinson. Now let's get to Lance Medow. He previews the Jets with Rich Cimini.
Bragging rights at MetLife Stadium up for grabs this Sunday as the Giants and Jets collide in the regular season for the first time since 2019. To help break down what to expect from the Jets, we're now joined by a man who covers gangrene for ESPN as their NFL Nation reporter, Rich Cimini. Rich, you got Lance Medow here on Giants.com. Hope all is well. How's everything on your end?
Well, thank you, Lance, for having me. I'm looking forward to this game on Sunday.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure having you on the program, and I want to start with probably the talk of the town for the Jets, and that's, of course, the quarterback position. Zach Wilson, on paper, the numbers don't jump off the page, but I think it's fair to say, Rich, from the time he took over for Aaron Rodgers in week 1 and was thrust right into the fire to now, there has been some improvement. So how would you best assess where he is now compared to where he was when he first took over the reins under center?
Yeah, I mean, definitely improvement. I think that Kansas City game in week 4 was a turning point for him. Even though the Jets lost that game, a heartbreaker, it was probably the best game he played as a pro. And in the last 3 games, it's funny you ask, I was just crunching the numbers before we got on. Since week 4, he's 17, or rather, he's 19th in the league in total QBR, and he's actually 17th. Or actually 12th in completion percentage. So that's been a bugaboo for him. Last year, his completion percentage was terrible. So he's a little bit more accurate. He's got a little better pocket presence. But the ultimate thing is, like Parcells always used to say, the quarterback's job is to get your team in the end zone. He has not done that. The Jets are not scoring a lot of points. Their red zone offense has been terrible. So he's still got a ways to go.
Now, Wink Martindale is known for blitzing going back to his Baltimore days. Rich, I would expect he's going to bring as much pressure as humanly possible towards Zach Wilson, given your point about the offensive struggles. When you take into consideration the play of the offensive line and some of the injuries, how much of an issue do you think Wink Martindale's pressure packages will be for that front as well as Zach this weekend?
Yes, huge challenge for Wilson. I think back to the preseason game, the Jets and Giants, when Rodgers was the quarterback and they got down in the red zone there, and the Giants are showing a cover 0 blitz. It's the preseason. You don't expect too many exotic things, and Wink shows a cover 0 blitz, and Rodgers checks out of a running play to a back shoulder fade to Garrett Wilson in the end zone for a touchdown. And so that's the kind of stuff that Zach Wilson's going to have to deal with in this game. And, is he equipped to make those changes at the line of scrimmage based on what he sees? I don't know the answer to that. That's going to be really interesting. We were speaking to, Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator. He said Wink's play sheet is as big and as diverse as the Cheesecake Factory menu. So the Jets have to be prepared for a lot.
Now, as far as the offensive line is concerned, they lost Elijah Vera-Tucker, their right guard / tackle, because I know he moved over there for a game, and they've had to play really like the Giants, Rich, a game of musical chairs, and it's a huge season for Mekhi Becton, given his injury history. Where would you assess this offensive line right now in terms of the chemistry and how they've held up given all of these changes that they've had to deal with?
And there's going to be more changes because it seems highly unlikely that Joe Tippmann is going to be able to play this week. He's been their right guard, and he was doing an okay job. But so I expect the former Washington Commander Wes Schweitzer to be the right guard this week. So it's another different combination for them. They've had some good moments, some bad moments. I think they've been able to run the ball at times. I mean, Breece Hall is really doing very well. So can they run the ball against the 8-man fronts they're going to see from the Giants? That'll be a big question. So the line, they've given up 9 sacks in the last 2 games, though. So that's been somewhat of an issue. And so I think they're really honing in on that this week, just studying their pass protection rules, because the Giants are going to bring pressures from all different directions.
To your point, I want to piggyback off of the fact that Breece Hall and company have been running the ball effectively. They're 12th in the NFL in rushing yards per game. He's averaging 6.5 yards per carry. That's first in the NFL. So I think that does speak volumes of the offensive line. How much, now that he's a little bit more removed from that torn ACL, would you say the offense essentially is running through Breece Hall more so than any other component on that side of the ball?
Absolutely. He is like the X factor for them, because it was right around this time last year. In fact, they just passed the 1-year anniversary of his ACL injury, that things went south for them. There were some other issues last year, Zach Wilson struggling, but not having Breece Hall last year for the last 10 games was just a massive blow to this team. But now they have him. He's clearly back to 100%. He's no longer on a pitch count restriction. And so they can run him as much as they want. And also out of the backfield. We saw that in the last game. He caught a few balls out of the backfield. He can make some yardage that way. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Lance. I think the offense runs through him. They are 7-0 when he scores a touchdown. So that speaks a lot.
100%. Now, it seems as if the overlooked individual in this equation, Rich, though, is Dalvin Cook. They went out, they got him in mid-August. I understand he wasn't around for much of training camp, so I'm sure they're slowly easing him in. But now that the Jets are coming off the bye, how fair is it to say that we actually may see more of Dalvin Cook moving forward, maybe even starting this weekend against the Giants?
Yeah, I don't know about that, Lance. He has not been effective, and Breece Hall has been, and Hall will be well rested coming off the bye, obviously. And yeah, Dalvin Cook's been an interesting story. I thought he would be much more involved in the first half of the season, and then I thought his carries would taper off as the year went on, as Breece Hall got back to full strength. But, Dalvin Cook has not been effective at all. His numbers are way down. I think if you look at some of the analytics, he's one of the lowest ranked running backs in the league. And the Jets are claiming it's because he didn't have training camp. He signed late. And they feel just now he's getting his legs under him. I'm not so sure about that. I think his carries will be limited. Like we just talked about, it's Breece Hall's offense. And so Dalvin Cook, his name has come up in even some trade talks. I think ultimately he'll probably stay. I don't think they'll trade him. But it's a signing that hasn't worked out for the Jets.
As far as the rest of the personnel goes, we were talking about the emphasis for the Jets offense clearly is on the ground. And Garrett Wilson, he's their top guy, receptions, receiving yards, targets, and receiving touchdowns. Who outside of Garrett Wilson, Rich, is somebody that the Giants secondary needs to watch out for? Because if you look at it just from a statistical standpoint, the numbers haven't necessarily been spreading the wealth across the board. Is it the tight ends? Is there another receiver that they want to get more involved? How would you best assess that situation?
Yeah, I think the Jets are like a team with a clear-cut number one receiver and Garrett Wilson, and just a lot of 3s and 4s. They don't have like a really good number 2 receiver. It's supposed to be Allen Lazard, but he's been kind of pedestrian the first few games, and so they don't have a clear-cut number 2 option. I think Tyler Conklin probably is. Tyler Conklin has been effective in the passing game. Has had some good plays where he's had some yards after the catch. On one play in Denver, he looked like Bavaro. I think he carried some guys for about 20 yards, of course, reminiscent of the 1986 Mark Bavaro play against San Francisco. Sure. I asked Tyler about that after the game, and he said he actually had people texting him videos of the Bavaro play and saying, hey, you pulled a Bavaro. I'm not sure he knew who Bavaro was, but he does now. But anyway, so yeah, I think he is probably the second best option they have in the passing game. It is clearly kind of an issue for this offense as they've been evolving. And, they traded away Mecole Hardman. I didn't quite understand that trade. And I think you're going to see more out of their rookie receiver, Xavier Gibson. I think they're really going to try to give him more snaps.
And he's also provided a nice spark on special teams. Of course, the game-winning score against the Buffalo Bills earlier this season. As we're talking with Rich Cimini, he covers the Jets, the ESPN NFL Nation reporter. Let's flip the script, Rich, to the defensive side of the ball. It goes without saying the Jets have one of the best defenses, and their defensive front has plenty of wealth and talent. But I would argue their linebacker, Quincy Williams, may be perhaps the true MVP of that side of the ball. I'm curious how much you maybe agree with that assessment and why he's been so effective in the middle of that defense.
Great point, Lance. In fact, I think if you took a vote now of the players on defense, I think he might be their defensive MVP. He's come up with some huge plays. He had the late fourth quarter strip sack in Denver that resulted in a scoop and score for Bryce Hall, which sealed the game. And so he's made some really big plays. He got paid this offseason, and I think it was 3 years, $18 million. And it's a cool story because he was cut by Jacksonville and the Jets picked him up. And at first we thought, oh, okay, this is just, they did him a favor because they have his brother on the team, Quinnen. And it's a cool brother story, but he's improved constantly, year after year. And you could see it last year starting to come to fruition from him. He's really, really fast. I mean, he is a sideline to sideline linebacker. His pass coverage has improved. He's become a good blitzer. Now, he doesn't blitz a lot. This is not like the Giants defense. The Jets don't blitz a lot. But when he does, he's usually pretty effective. And his goal is to make the Pro Bowl this year. I don't know if he will or not. We got a long way to go, but so far he's had a Pro Bowl year.
And he's responsible for the high volume of takeaways they have. You look 13. I mean, that puts them tied for third in the NFL. I was looking, Rich, back at the numbers, and they had 16 all of last season, which is crazy. I mean, they're that close to matching and surpassing it. Normally, I would say, okay, the scheme is a product of creating the takeaways, and I don't want to say it's luck. So what do you attribute to why has the volume skyrocketed so much this season?
That's a great question because last year, I mean, it was the exact opposite. They went several games toward the end of the year without getting a single takeaway. And now all of a sudden they're coming in bunches. And so you can't even say they've been doing it against bad competition because against Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts, who finished 1, 2, 3 in the MVP voting last year, they have 8 interceptions against those guys. So they've been facing good competition. And I can't say. I mean, they're getting good pressure on the quarterback. I think they're 4th in pressure percentage, but they're not getting sacks. It's just been pressure, and it's the same scheme as last year, and it's largely the same cast of characters. So maybe just more familiarity in the scheme has something to do with it. But it is unusual. It's one of those hard to explain things.
And what was most impressive to me, Rich, is the fact that they're coming off that win against the Eagles and they're down Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, their top 2 corners, yet they still get the 4 takeaways. I guess what I'm getting at is, what does that say about the depth of the secondary, perhaps? I know the defensive front helps, but you're down both of those guys, yet you still keep Jalen Hurts and company with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and all those weapons pretty much in check.
Yeah, they also didn't have their 4th corner, Brandon Echols, who was out. And then their slot guy, Michael Carter, got hurt toward the end of that game. So for a little stretch, they were actually playing without their top 4 corners. And they had a couple of guys up from the practice squad. Bryce Hall, who a draft pick from a few years ago, has come in and done a solid job. I do expect Gardner and Reed and Echols to be back this week, so their secondary should be whole again. But I think partly of that is the scheme. It's a zone-based defense, so they're not putting these guys in a lot of man-to-man situations, which helps. And also the pass rush, they were able to generate some pressure against a really good Eagles offensive line. Now, Lane Johnson did get hurt in the first half, the all-pro right tackle, so that helped for sure. But the Jets were able to get enough pressure, which really helped the back end.
And speaking of pressure, I mean, clearly it circles back to where you and I started on the defensive front, that the guys up front, it's so strong, it's so deep. But what at least has been surprising to me, Rich, is Will McDonald, who they drafted the first round. He's playing 14% of the defensive snaps, and he clearly has not, I think, gotten maybe as much of an opportunity as most people anticipated coming out of the draft. What is that a byproduct of? Is that the fact that they just have so many guys good in front of him, or he hasn't shown enough over the course of practice thus far?
Yeah, a combination of those. He's probably their 4th or 5th defensive end. I mean, Jermaine Johnson really has stepped forward this year. their first round pick from last year, and then, John Franklin Myers. And then you have Bryce Huff, who comes off the bench, who's one of the leaders in the league in pressure percentage. He's like instant pressure when he comes in. He can disrupt all the time. And so even they have Carl Lawson, he's slipped on the depth chart. He's probably fourth or fifth. So you're right, McDonald has not done much at all. And he's a smaller guy. I think they expected a transition for him this year. He's only about 240 pounds, 245. So he's a situational guy. They don't really trust him to play first or second down against the run. And so this is kind of like a redshirt year for him, much like it was last year for Jermaine Johnson. And they're just hoping that with a full year in the offseason program, that McDonald can build himself up body-wise and become more of a part of the rotation.
So, Rich, you mentioned the team is well rested, clearly, because they're coming off the bye, though I was looking at these numbers, and it's a bit baffling. Following the bye under Robert Saleh, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, they're 0-2, and the numbers aren't pretty. They're averaging 8 points, allowing 32. Now, in fairness, they played the Patriots 2 times in Bill Belichick, so context is important. Is there anything, though, to read into that beyond X's and O's since Robert Saleh took over as the head man?
It's a small sample size. I know they've actually, it goes back even further than that. I think they've lost 6 or 7 in a row coming out of the bye. So, they had the 2 debacles against the Patriots. One was where they gave up like 50 points, and that was a blowout. And then the other one last year was where it was the 10-3 game where they lost on a walk-off punt return, and Zach Wilson had that horrendous game that ultimately led to his benching. I think it's clearly enough of a concern for the Jets to put a lot of time and energy into try to figure it out. They have this sports science department like a lot of teams do now. And I think this was a part of their offseason planning is to what to do after the bye week. So they tweak their schedule a little bit, like minor stuff, just move some things around during the day just to try to change things up a little bit. So, I mean, they acknowledge that it is an issue and that they've been studying it and trying to be better out of it. And the other thing they have to figure out is they're a lousy first half team. I mean, the Jets I know the Giants have been dealing with this as well. They're playing from behind every week. And, something's got to give this week, I would think. When the Jets have trailed in every game at halftime this year. It's like they don't come alive until the second half. That's another issue they have to solve.
Well, I'm glad you went there because the Giants didn't score a first-half touchdown until their last game against the Washington Commanders this season. So you're right. There are a bit of mirror images, Rich. You got 2 offenses that are struggling, both under 20 points a game, and 2 defenses. The Jets have been more consistent, I would argue, than the Giants, who have come alive over the last 2 games. I think if we do the paper test, you would say, well, this game's probably going to be a low-scoring affair. It could be 17-14, 13-10. Do you see it that way, Rich, or is this going to be something that surprises all of us and both offenses are going to all of a sudden catch fire?
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think this is – what's the over-under? Is like 36 on this game or something like that, which for an NFL game is ridiculously low. I totally see a low-scoring field position kind of game that maybe special teams becomes a factor. I could see a field goal kicking contest between Zuerlein and Medow. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Punting will be key. The Jets, I know Thomas Morstead's had a real solid year, good directional punter. I know the Giants have had some issues on both ways, catching the punts and punting them. So maybe that's a factor in the game, but you're absolutely right, Lance. I see this as a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point about special teams. Field positioning could very well dictate if you get good starting field position so that you're able to get an extra field goal or 2. That could very well decide this game. Rich, before I let you go, whenever the Giants and the Jets play, everybody tries to maybe make more of this matchup than it is, and we bring up the rivalry. I'm curious because you've covered the Jets for a very long time. You've spoken to a lot of players that have been on both sides of the equation. Is this truly a rivalry? I mean, given the fact they play once every 4 years, they're not in the same conference, they're not in the same division. What is truly on the line in a game like this, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's not rivalry. I mean, it's the old phrase, and I'm sure you've been around long, the old thing for bragging rights. I mean, there's no real bragging rights. I didn't even remember who won the game in 2019 until earlier this week when I started researching this week's game. So, in the old days, I think maybe it meant more because the players, you recall in the offseason, they did some charity events together. Even when I was a kid, I remember going to like Jets Giants were playing basketball, at high school gyms around the area. And those things would get a little chippy as well. And so maybe there was a little more then. And now I talked to a couple of players yesterday, and John Franklin Myers was actually kind of funny. He was like, I don't want to be the king of New York. I want to be the king of the NFL. And he's like, big brother, little brother. He goes, I don't give a blank about that. So some of the players admit that there's a little extra to it. I think the Jets are more intrigued by the fact that they're going to be on the opposite sideline. They're going to say that's weird being the visitor in their own stadium. Yeah, I mean, it's a little different because it's the two teams in New York, New Jersey, but I wouldn't call it a rivalry. They don't play often enough to be a rivalry.
I'm with you. I think there needs to be some substance behind it to pack some punch to justify perhaps a rivalry back and forth. And clearly we haven't seen that. He is Rich Cimini. He covers the Jets, ESPN, NFL Nation reporter to help set the scene for the Jets and the Giants in week number 8. Rich, greatly appreciate the time and the insight. Always good catching up with you. Enjoy the game and look forward to talking to you down the road.
Thanks for having me, Lance. Enjoy the game. Should be a good one.
Absolutely. You got it. My pleasure.
You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Hey, Giant fans, Citizens is presenting a new video series, Champion the Journey, where Eli Manning talks with Tracy Wolfson about how his elite quarterbacking skills help make him ready to succeed in his post-football career. Watch the series now at citizensbank.com/champion the journey. Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. That's Rich Cimini, a great inside look at the Jets. No one does it better than Rich. He's been covering them a long time. We thank him and Lance. Finally, let's get to the head coach of the New York Football Giants, Brian Daboll. Our very own Bob Papa, the voice of the Giants, sat down and spoke with him.
And as always, we're joined by the head coach of the New York Giants, Brian Daboll. Coach, obviously you guys are coming off a win last week against Washington. Complimentary football was really the order. What's the key to that being a successful recipe?
Yeah, well, I think if you can get up early and change the flow of the game so the defense can rush the passer on some of the passes, that always helps. Taking care of the football, which we got to do a better job of. We had previously the prior couple weeks not giving them short fields to give their offense easy opportunities to score, and then holding them back there and 3 and outs or keeping them on their side of the field. So it gives the offense good field position. The turnovers certainly help. The one that Tay had, and then they got the personal foul. That helps on a short field. So everybody dialed in, working together, doing the necessary things. But I'd say ball security and ball disruption are key components to it.
Can you explain to the fans that are listening right now, what has been the keys to the evolution of this defense becoming a massive strength for this football team?
Yeah, I think each week, right from the get-go, you try to improve certain things, base fundamentals like tackling, staying over the deep ball, doing the things you need to do each game plan. Each game plan is a little different. Each offense you're going against is a little bit different, affecting the passer. Those are all key elements.
You're playing the Jets. The Giants only play the Jets once every 4 years. You as a football coach, you as a team, it's all about a series of one-game winning streaks. So you'll try to get your second one-game winning streak this week. Do you feel any sense of rivalry from a coaching and team standpoint, or is that really more something for fans to enjoy?
Well, like I've said before, I have great appreciation for it. It's important, but the most important thing for us is getting ready to play a good team that's 3-3 and playing good football and doing the necessary things we need to do to try to get the results we're looking for.
Coach, they have a fantastic core of defensive players. It looks like they're going to get Sauce Gardner back in this game. He had been knocked out with a concussion, but he's been practicing full. What makes their defense such a challenge? Because from a lot of different metrics, they're tops in the NFL in a lot of areas.
Yeah, we'll start with they have good players. That's number one. And then they have a scheme that Coach Saleh really believes in and has been successful for a while. They're zone-based defense. They do a good job of reading the quarterback and taking the ball away. They rotate their line like a hockey shift, all capable players that cause issues both in the run and pass game. It always starts up front. They got 2 good corners that can cover. They got a very good middle linebacker, so they got really good players, and they play extremely fast, do the things that good defenses do, play good in the red zone, take the ball away, don't give up a lot of points, particularly in the second half as the game goes on. So definitely a challenging defense and one of the better defenses in the league that turned the ball over quite a bit against some, I'd say, really, really top-notch quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 13 takeaways this year, and as you mentioned, they've played some really good quarterbacks. Let's go to the other side of the football. Obviously, with Aaron Rodgers not playing, Zach Wilson is back in there. He seems, at least from the naked eye, that he's playing a cleaner brand of football. What are you seeing as some of the things that, make him dangerous along with the rest of their offense with Hall and Garrett Wilson on the outside?
Yeah, well, I think that Coach Hackett's done a good job with him. You see steady improvement, and, they play the game the right way. They don't turn the ball over. Brees has done a fabulous job of creating explosives and changing field position or scoring when he touches the ball. And he's one of the top-notch backs right now, coming off that ACL, playing extremely good football. And Wilson, you got to account for Wilson to Wilson, if you will. Wilson's a very young, a very good, young, talented receiver, and they're doing the necessary things. They're playing complementary football. They had the Chiefs right down to the end. They beat obviously Philadelphia, Buffalo, Denver at their place. So they're a very good football team.
Coach, complementary football. It's a term that's used. I'm not sure if fans always necessarily understand it, but if you could educate our audience just a little bit. I mean, you're an offensive guy, and everybody wants to see teams score, but punting is not always a bad thing, is it?
No, you try to end every drive with a kick offensively. Obviously, extra points is what you're aiming for. But each game is different. The teams you're playing are different. Teams have different strengths, and you have to try to come up with a game plan collectively, not just on one side of the ball, collectively in all 3 phases to give yourself the best chance to win.
And then the final question, it's weird that I'm going to end with this question, but one of the things that I feel like as part of this complementary football is that your punter, Jamie Gillen, has been very effective as far as direction of punt, height of punt, and last week, especially in that wind. What improvements have you seen in his game?
Yeah, true pro, but he's done a fabulous job this year for us. Glad we have him. He's a huge part in terms of the field position aspect of the game, and he's going to have to play well this week, as is Graham. Those specialists are very important. Usually, when you have good specialists that make their kicks or have good kicks, and the snappers, that's the first thing in terms of having a good special teams.
Yeah, and especially this time of year as the wind starts to pick up and it's swirling in the building. But it should be a lot of fun today, Coach. We wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Thanks, Pop.
We thank Bob Papa, we thank Brian Daboll, Rich Cimini, Lance Medow, and Wan'Dale Robinson for all being part of this Friday edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, presented by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. Of course, you can find the Giants Huddle podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms. Just search and subscribe. Leave a 5-star positive review if you're an Apple Podcast. And of course, you can also find it on the Giants app. Or for all of our podcast offerings, go to giants.com/podcast. And don't forget to check out our brand new podcast, The Giants Hangout. It's coming your way twice a week. Thanks for being with us. Thank you to our guests. We'll see you next time on the Giants Huddle podcast. Enjoy the game this weekend, everybody.